I printed the agenda, so I can go forward.
Let's do it. It's too beautiful to stop in here.
All right, we are live. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 17th Litchfield School Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The time is now 5:30, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a couple of program notes this evening. We have the superintendent who is out enjoying some PTO time, so he will not be with us this evening. Moving into review and revision of the agenda. Any reviews, changes to the agenda this evening? Hearing none. We'll move into our consent agenda. Any board members like to move items out of consent this evening? We do have facilities on the agenda already for a little bit later on for an update.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good. The only item I'd mentioned, and more for Mr. Plansky for your reference, the Budget Committee is meeting next week, just putting it as a reminder for coverage.
Next Thursday, right?
Yep, you got it.
It's on the calendar.
Cool, all right. Moving into summary of non-public actions from our April 3rd, 2024 meeting. Mr. Shoemaker motioned to approve the March 20th, 2024 meeting. Non-public minutes. Mr. Plansky seconded the motion. The motion passed 5-0-0. There was a leave of absence. The motion passed 5-0-0 to approve a requested leave of absence for Ms. Sweet, Jessica Sweet. There were also annual nominations. The motions for annual nominations passed for the following. Annual nomination list for GMS passed 5-0-0. The annual nomination list for LMS passed 5-0-0. The annual nomination list for CHS passed 5-0-0. The annual nomination list for district-wide also passed 5-0-0. The annual nomination list for our administration passed 5-0-0. And annual nomination list for yearly passed 5-0-0. Additionally, there were some resignations at our April 3rd meeting, notably 3 of them. The resignations were all passed 5-0-0. Lynn, help me with the last name. Calantoni, thank you. That resignation was accepted 5-0-0. Jacqueline Heaton passed 5-0-0, was accepted 5-0-0, and Shannon Riley. That resignation was also accepted 5-0-0. There were a couple of retirements also at our April 3rd meeting. We have Carol Levesque, GMS, grade 3. That was accepted 5-0-0, as well as Paula Berry, also accepted 5-0-0, wishing them the best in their retirements. Moving into the next school board agenda item, we have presentation and recognition. And with us this evening, we have our Campbell High School principal, Mr. Jacob Hess.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I apologize for the voice ahead of time. My board report this time around, we've just had some incredible things going on at the high school. So I wanted to highlight some of those events because I think that truly embodies what our students and the adults that are attached to the building are working on building when it comes to climate and culture and the overall experiences for kids at Campbell High School and the community at large. So first and foremost, I want to celebrate our production of Clue that we just had this past weekend. I've been around high school theater for 16 years as a former actor and director myself in high school, and I'll say this is one of the smoothest, cleanest productions I've seen on stage. So it was super impressive. We had over 36 kids partake in all aspects of the production, from building the set to the lighting, directing of the characters and kind of where they want to go with those. Then we had 4 fantastic adults, and Tina Harrison, Miriam Abdi as the co-directors, Nate Lammy as the producer, and Dan Harrison as the kind of builder, overseer. So just another fantastic production at the high school. We continue to see those numbers growing for these extracurricular theater activities, and we're hoping that we see those numbers translate into the classroom as well as we move forward. So this past weekend, our youth and government team went to a mock legislation at the New Hampshire State House, a fantastic showing there. Students walked away with some bills that were passed and Colby West and Josh Green received nominations to be invited to the national conference in June in Washington, D.C. So just some really nice time there. Our National Honor Society hosted a town carnival. I saw at least one of you there at that as their chapter project this year. And it was just really nice to show up to the high school and see just a ton of community members there with their kids, spending time at the high school, playing games, face paint, tons of sugar. My daughter walked away on a sugar high that's still going, I think. But it was really nice because we tied some other groups in too. Robotics was there, Science Honor Society was part of it. So just some really great work by National Honor Society and all the groups there. And then finally, our Campbell Student Council, for the first time ever, has been recognized as a National Council of Excellence. It's a great award. Only 5 councils in New Hampshire were recognized with this award. You have to apply for it. And they've got a pretty strict set of guidelines in order to do that. The principal has to review the application and sign off on it before it gets sent in. And it's just goes hand in hand to show what our kids are doing on the student council level, and also what Mr. McDonough is doing as an advisor to continue to push these kids to grow and be leaders in our building. So I just wanted to share those recognitions and highlights. Any questions about those? And I think if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I think there's a picture, like page 3. So Mr. McDonough hosted a nice dinner for student council at his house. They do some really nice group bonding activities. So it's just a fantastic group. I'll say out of all of our groups at the high school, our student council is active in just about everything that we do. So very grateful for them and what they bring to our school.
I spy Anthony.
And then just the last part of my report is you guys all saw the NEASC report. So at the end, beginning of last year, my first year as principal, I had to submit technically our 2-year report, but it was a year late, so I submitted that. And then I had to do our 5-year report this year. So I submitted the 5-year report with help from Amy Gaspar, feedback from Mary Widman and Dr. Jetty. We put that together. And it's really like a self-evaluation. How are you doing on these things currently? It's an interesting process being the new principal to the building. We have some great people in the building to rely on for that information. And then we got our feedback report from that, which I believe is attached to the agenda. There's the original report that I submitted, the feedback report, and also I attached the accreditation standards for NEASC. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the NEASC accreditation process. But basically, this gives us a nice roadmap for the next 2 years for the things we'll continue to work on before we have our collaborative conference in 2027. So the collaborative conference, they'll send a team to Campbell High School to look at all of the accreditation standards. They'll spend 3 days with us going through each of the standards, looking for evidence. They use our 5-year report as kind of a guiding principle. At the end of that, they give us a report that basically says, in the next 2 years before your decennial visit, which for us is in 2029, here's the things we really need to see improvement on to make sure we're in a good spot. So Dr. Jetty did a really great job this past year of getting myself and Dan Mitchell and him and Mary Widman out on NEASC visits. I was part of 2 NEASC visits this year, one to Marshwood High School in New Brunswick, just over the border in Maine, and then I was at Winnicott High School last month as well. So having never been part of the NEASC process, it was great to see what we're going to be doing over the next 4 or 5 years at Campbell. So we're doing some great stuff. They highlighted a lot of great things that we're doing. There's a lot of great work still to be done that we're looking forward to doing. So that's kind of what we got going on at Campbell High School right now. Questions?
Any questions for Principal Hess? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your update.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on with our agenda, we have Anthony with us this evening. Anthony, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Nick is going to be a little late. He's at a lacrosse game at Trinity. Before I start though, does anyone have any questions from last presentation? just we couldn't make it.
We
No.
reviewed it, but thank you.
Okay. Alright. So for sports, boys lacrosse are 2-0. Their next game is today away at Trinity. Baseball is 2-1. Their next game is today home against Newfound. Track is at 1 meet. Girls came in 4th. Boys came in 7th. Girls lacrosse is 1-1. Their next game is today home against Trinity. Softball is 0-2. Their next game is today home against Co-Brown. The Clue play went really well. They had a total of 3 shows over the past weekend. Miss Harrison helped out a lot with the play. Seniors and juniors had a spaghetti dinner fundraiser that went well Saturday night. The NHS Carnival went super well and raised money for Boston Children's Hospital on behalf of Kylie Patton. Youth in Government went to the State House in Concord for the legislative session recently and won Best Representative Colby West, Best Legislation Jocelyn Green. Both will be attending KONA, which is a national level of youth in government. And then we have some pictures from the fundraiser.
It's a great day for it.
Yeah. And then the next picture is the youth in government event when we went to the State House.
That's great.
And then for current events, students and teachers are doing digital portfolios to demonstrate and take accountability of their learning. Prom tickets are being sold at lunches. They start at $65 and are $85. And then Campbell won National Council of Excellence Award, which is a pretty prestigious award. 5 schools in New Hampshire got this award, including Campbell.
Well done.
Thank you.
Nice.
And then we have the same picture.
Yeah.
I like the dog made the picture too.
Right.
For upcoming events, spring break is next week. Seniors have senior project evaluations on the 9th of May, and AP exams start the week of the 4th. And then that's it. And then Mr. Cutter, Dr. Jetty recently spoke with me about an academic page that you wanted us to
Yeah.
add.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
So we didn't put this in at this presentation just because we didn't want to go into it blindly. We didn't really know how it should look. Mr. Hess, every 1 to 2 weeks, sends out a newsletter that explains every class's academic results. But we didn't really know how the page should look. So what is your perspective on that?
Really just a quick summary, right? I mean, we highlight a lot in your student reports about sports and, you know, the Honor Society and all those programs, but I feel like we haven't touched a lot about the hard work and the academics that the students are really putting in. So maybe just a summary of, you know, accomplishments academically for the various grades at high school.
Okay.
Really simple, 1-pager, just to touch upon it, right? Make sure that we're also highlighting that portion of what you guys do every day.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anthony was looking for more work. I'm glad that you came up with that.
I try. I'm good for something.
Time.
All right, any questions for Anthony this evening? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into our community consent, or community comment on agenda items, excuse me. So this is where public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and they shall be made without expectation of a response by any school board member. Comments and statements may be made on topics contained on the agenda. I don't see anybody from the community with us this evening, but I will open it up for community comment at this time. And I will close community comment at this time. There will be a second opportunity for comment towards the end of our agenda this evening. Next up is correspondence.
Yes, thankfully it was a good, quiet week to start off my correspondence run here. On April 3rd, Mr. Plansky emailed the board forwarding the economic development survey results so that we could review them. On April 3rd, Mike Anaskovich, a community member, emailed the board after his attendance at the board meeting with some suggestions for the facilities committee and approaching the GMS project. On April 5th, Mr. Totten sent an email to the board circulating his resignation for effective June 30th. On April 7th, Mr. Cutter emailed the board to let us know that there had been 16 responses to the facility improvement form, and that he was considering pausing it, and Dr. Jetty responded that he was going to leave it open until Monday because that's what was in the newsletters. On April 8th, Ms. Harrison emailed the board with an invitation for the board to preview Clue, which Mr. Cutter and I attended and was fantastic.
Set looked great, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
let Dan.
nice job.
Yeah.
On April 8th, Mr. Benoit, CHS teacher, sent an invitation to the board to attend senior project night Friday night, as well as if the board wanted to partake during the daytime process, we would be able to. On April 9th, Renee Burgess, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, emailed the board to obtain some missing initials on the ethics policy, and both Mr. Plansky and Mr. Cutter responded, and I assume have initialed it since then. April 10th, Ms. Cardinal, a community member, emailed the board with an issue regarding her son's senior project to the car show with a location change, and that issue was worked out directly with Mr. Hess in the school. On April 10th, Ms. Sullivan emailed and circulated the April 3rd public and non-public minutes. On April 11th, Alexander Kirby, CHS student, emailed to inform the board that the CHS Student Council was awarded the National Council of Excellence Award, and Mr. Cutter responded with congratulations from the board. On April 11th, Elizabeth McDonald, a CHS member, circulated an email from Thomas Quintero regarding his running of the Boston Marathon, and Mr. Cutter responded with congratulations from the board, and since then, we've learned that he was fabulous.
He
Yeah.
was in the money.
He was, and
Yeah.
he did great. And Mrs. Patton and her husband, Chris Patton, also ran the marathon and finished, which was amazing. So congratulations to all of them. On April 12th, Ann Inamorati from the business office circulated the manifest. On April 12th, Renee Burgess circulated the April 17th agenda. And on April 12th, Dr. Jetty sent a letter to the zoning board, copying the board with the letter from our legal counsel regarding the variance requested on Woodhawk Way. Ms. Gandia responded that it would be read into the record. And then Mr. Cutter attended the meeting and indicated that the issue was postponed until May. So that covers our correspondence for the last 2 weeks.
All right. Any other board members have correspondence to add this evening? All right, sounds good. Moving right along here, we'll move into our general business. Typically, we have a superintendent's report at this time. The superintendent is not with us this evening. So we'll move right into business and operations and turn it over to Mr. Totten.
Great, thanks.
And first and foremost, no, we're not
Yeah.
accepting a resignation.
So since that was read, I do want to thank Litchfield. I came into Litchfield with many years in education, but 0 years as a BA. So I was able to learn a lot the last 2 years with the help of the board members, school personnel, Dr. Jetty, as well as budget committee and other committees within the town. So it's kind of my reason for leaving too, is that kind of just excelling that growth a little bit more. So I have a unique opportunity next year that I'm going to take, and then it kind of also leads to some more mid and long-term goals of mine as well. But I definitely appreciate my time here.
Well,
So thank you.
congratulations to you. We wish you obviously the very best.
Thanks.
You'll be missed.
You will be sorely missed.
So,
Feel free to come back.
so in regards to my report, all DRA reporting is in and accepted, which is a good thing. And then the audit we have booked for the 3rd week in July, a little bit early, but we'll get ourselves ready. That way we'll give the new BA a little bit more time to complete the DOE 25 at that point as well. So I don't know if there's any questions on the monthlies.
Not from my side. Nope.
Straightforward, thank you.
All right, great, thanks.
Anything
All
else
set.
to highlight?
No.
Okay. Moving right along. With that, we'll move right into our public minutes from April 3rd. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the public minutes? If so, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the April 3rd, 2024 public minutes.
Motion by Ms. Ames. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Plansky. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Next up is new business. Let's see here. We have discussed payroll manifest timing. The board will discuss procedures related to the approval of the payroll manifest, and notably there are 2 policies that have been linked to this. One of the things that, this is a carryover from our last meeting, right? One of the things that I just wanted to highlight for board awareness is there are, in some cases, manifests that we sign related to payroll in which payroll has already been processed. So we're signing the manifest post the payment. And we've had some initial conversations, we being, Ms. Ames and I have had some initial conversations with the superintendent on how we might be able to resolve that, because in my mind, we should be signing before payments are issued, right? And if there's an opportunity, notably with payroll, if we can predict it and advance it, or we know it in advance, then maybe we can sign it in advance of some sort, right? Mr. Totten, did the superintendent talk to you about this one at all and how we might be able to solve for it?
So, yeah, so Dr. Jetty and Holly Falzone, who oversees payroll, so we've talked several times about this. So the reason why there's two policies linked is that the first one, part of that policy says that payroll will happen every 2 weeks. So it's something that can set a clock to it as far as when it's gonna happen, and then 2 weeks later, it's gonna happen again. So that is part of the tough part about making sure that the manifest that you sign off on includes pre-authorizing payroll, because it happens every 2 weeks. Sometimes the board meets twice a month, sometimes once a month, but it's not gonna line up. So that's why there's that second policy that says, okay, we have a known amount which the town has approved to go towards salaries. So before the fiscal year starts, so again, our fiscal year is July 1st through the end of June, that amount can be presented to the board. The board can sign off on it. And then at that point, it's as long as you're not gonna go over that amount, it's more of a check by the trustee as well as the people within, in this case, cause it's the HR and the business department kind of making sure it's moving forward the right way with still that documentation going to the board. So, key to this would be to get that, amount that was approved, to the board before July 1st, so that signature can occur on it. That's one of the carve-outs that's part of the policy, and I think just straightforward, just because payroll happening every 2 weeks, it's not always gonna line up with the board meeting as well. So, that we'll work to get that to you. It's an easy thing to get you because our payroll is, salaries are, accounts 100 through 130. And they're typically in 3 buckets. They are the teachers or LEA contract, LSSA contract, and then the non-union people. So none of those groups this year will be over what the town has approved for the salary. I'm sure that doesn't surprise most people because we have not been able to hire for several positions, and especially in the support staff contract. Every year the goal is to never exceed your salary. Even though it's a bottom line budget, you really shouldn't be exceeding your salary and grabbing money from non-salary to put in there as well, because it just goes into kind of building the trust of the town and stuff like that. So no group is going to exceed their salary this year, but we'll have ready for the board to sign before July, kind of the total amount going into next year.
Excellent. So more to come on this one as we go through the next couple of months, but we are looking to get a little bit more transparency into that and sign it in advance.
Wasn't this all because we had the retro pay in that pay period? That was paid before we signed up on it?
That's what brought it to light, and the question became, well, if it was already paid, how come we didn't see it in a manifest that we had to sign?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because it was payroll, and per the 2 week cycle that our employees are paid, it went out, right?
So there's several employees that are hourly employees.
Right.
So they have to get their information in on I think it's like Friday, and then the principals have to sign off it on Monday, and then they get paid on that Wednesday, Thursday type of thing. So not everyone knows the amount that they're going to make every 2 weeks. I do, but a decent amount of our employees are hourly employees, so there's no way to fully predict what they're going to make, because some of those hourly employees have also been helping us out by working overtime as well, and getting their paycheck to them in a timely manner is definitely something that's important to us. So we'll work to kind of make sure that the policies are all kind of connected and moving forward the right way.
Thank you, Mr. Dotton. Any further questions? More to come. Okay. Next up is our school district goals and strategic planning. So this is an item that we wanted to add to tonight's agenda, just making sure that we're continuing to think about or starting to formulate ideas about what our goals and objectives are for the next 3 years. What is linked here are previous goals that the board had adopted for previous sessions. And as we think about what the priorities are for our goals for the upcoming 3 years, we wanted to link them and just highlight them for you. Anything to add there?
No, I mean, I think, at some point we need to have a conversation in terms of how we want, what our board goals are. I would be interested in hearing from the building admin what their goals are. I assume typically this is top down in the sense that we set what our overarching goals are and then the district and whatnot. But before we even have our overarching goals, I would like to hear if any of the principals have specific goals in mind, so we may or may not be able to incorporate that idea into our overarching theme, I guess, for the 3-year period, our strategic plan. So I think maybe we can start to gather some of that information, but yeah, we need to start lining up what this is going to look like and how much do we want to differ. I didn't have a chance to look at the 12 to 15 and the 15 to 18, so it'll be interesting to compare that and have a conversation. So I think this stays on the agenda for next time as we sort of a standing item until we have a plan in place.
This will be moved to old business, just so we have it as a continuous placeholder, so we can continue to think about and reflect on those new goals. But we will be looking to get our goals in place. I'd say certainly in the next couple of months. So I'd ask the board just to give it some thought.
So in terms of the goals, historically, have you guys gone back and looked? So I'm just looking at the last goals. So there was here's an easy one, increase SAT and ACT scores annually. Do you guys go back and benchmark these at different points throughout the year?
Yeah, so we get an annual report, and the and the principals have each kind of given their updates on what the goals are. So again, we sort of set out our 5 strategic plan items. From there, they break down more specific goals. The district breaks down more specific goals, and then from there, the building breaks down more specific goals. And so I think the last 3 presentations before this one with Jake, the 3 principals kind of highlighted where they were on their strategic goals for us, and then there's usually an annual update as well.
Cool.
We go over the data in August,
Yeah.
Oh,
the
perfect.
test scores and things.
I mean, the 5 kind of broad categories that we have here: love of learning, great teachers and great staff, right? Post-secondary pathways, making sure our kids have a plan, right? Facilities improvements and community engagement. They're all still very relevant, right? And the board could decide, those 5 still make sense, right?
Yeah.
But maybe
There's some areas underneath those that we may update, but
exactly.
Yeah, I mean this 18 to 21 is nicely laid out. So.
Yeah.
All right. So again, no actions for this evening, but just making sure it's top of mind for the board as we progress into our next several meetings. Any other questions on that?
No, I'm just noticing that the heading for
Yeah,
the
it's not
top
right.
one isn't correct, but it's the 21 to 24 are our more recent goals, just so people
Yeah,
know.
this is where it says 2018 to 2021 is actually our recent and our current goals that we're under now.
Oh.
So.
And then there's the 18 to 21, the 3 different 3-year cycles before that. It's just mislabeled, that's all. So when you're looking through, don't be confused.
Oh, I didn't even see the top one.
Okay.
I didn't see the top one.
Don't be confused as you're going through.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, moving forward in our agenda this evening, we have policy updates. I know we have an agenda drafted for the next meeting of the policy committee. When is that? When is the
We're
policy?
gonna meet in May is what our decision was, just with the, April vacation. I'm away, superintendent's away. We thought it would be easier, and then I think you're off the committee now, although you're welcome, obviously, to be on it as chair, or however, anyone's welcome to come. Tina's on it now, so the hope is to meet that 1st or 2nd week of May and be able to bring forward. However, there was some cleanup. There was some policies that came forward for a first read that, for whatever reason, didn't make it back, so we at least want to get those forward on the next agenda, and then as we move through the cycle, the goal will be 5 policies a meeting, which is ambitious, but
It's ambitious, but we have a lot of policies to catch up on.
It'll take 3 years to get through that.
So-
5 years.
We can do that. The board has appetite.
and that is the cycle. But we're gonna work our way through it, and Renee has been super helpful on this. Michelle Flynn actually has called in and has been helpful on some of this as well. So we have some good direction going forward. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. More to come on policies. Next up, shifting into old business within our agenda this evening, we have our LMS solar project update. Mr. Totten, would you be able to share an update this evening?
Yeah, so Dr. and Jetty and I were on the roof on Monday, so we continue to see progress. There was about 4 people up there. They're mainly working on the wiring, so they take individual panels and they combine every so often into a combiner box, and then they put that in the direction of the mechanical room as well. There were deliveries of equipment on Monday as well. Then we received the good news that the interconnection agreement with Eversource was passed back to us in a way where it's been approved by Eversource. We have to sign off on it as well. So again, that interconnection is whenever you're putting energy back on a line, there has to be an agreement that Eversource is looking over what you're doing and how you're setting it up so it's safe for them, safe for their workers. So sometimes that takes months, that has taken months, but we now have it. So that means that once the work is done, people come out to check the work as far as permitting goes and safety goes, then we would be able to flip the switch at that point. We wouldn't be waiting for anything extra, which would typically be the interconnection at that point. So things continue to progress.
So what's the latest go throw the switch day?
I don't know if it's any different from what was talked about last time, so I don't remember the exact date.
I think we were talking middle of May, probably.
Middle.
Is that right? Middle of May? Okay.
So, no setbacks as of now that we've heard of, so.
At least on schedule for what we were talking about before is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
And are we still on track for kind of the phase 2 part of this with, I'll call it the container that's going to go in the back of LMS with the backup systems or whatever it might be in that container?
So that is a little bit harder to answer because that is the battery storage. And so they're still working on the factory that's going to create the batteries at this point. So there are other factories that are not in the United States, so that there's a chance to buy it from other factories as well. But that was the update, I think, the last time too, that factory still hasn't been built, and that's still the case as of now. So
The factory hasn't been built?
that factory that has been bought, and it's been, now they need to kind of switch what used to be an old factory to.
So we bought something that doesn't exist.
So I thought, weren't they putting it together? I'm not even gonna try and speculate. No. Okay.
I think that was what the last update was, though, was that they were still building the factory.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to stay the
agenda. I think I may have heard
until
they were
it's
building the
complete, right?
batteries, not that they were
This is gonna stay on the agenda.
We
till
still
long
have a
after
way-
we're dead. You
We
mean?
have a ways to go. I
We
mean,
have a
clearly.
ways to go with that. The
With the
PPA again
storage.
is in effect as
Right.
far as capping what our costs are per year.
And
which
we
is
will
a key
still
thing.
still be producing electricity before
Yes.
then. It's just
Yep.
that's solely for the purpose of storing additional electricity.
Yeah, whenever you're a large company, you get demand charges. So if you're drawing in electricity at the time when many other places are,
Right.
then that becomes a larger part of your bill. So the idea of the storage is to take in and store not only from, when the sun is producing energy, but also at night when the energy costs aren't as high for a larger company. Store it and then use the battery energy during the high demand times, which would then decrease the demand charges. That's one of the reasons why we were able to get the 95,000 per year, where typically it would be more than that as well.
Gotcha.
So it kind of all goes together. So not having the batteries, but being on the PPA doesn't hurt Litchfield. It hurts the company
Right.
who is the countersign on the PPA.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on solar at LMS? Okay, moving forward to facilities. Mr. Shoemaker, I'll turn it over to you for a quick update.
Oh, yes. So we had our first facilities meeting with all of our new members. It was a very large turnout, and it was a great meeting. A lot of just sort of getting to know everyone and their backgrounds. That was followed up with a walkthrough of GMS with the majority. I think almost everyone that joined the facilities committee was able to make the walkthrough. We had a really good turnout. And we spent, I think, 3 hours doing a walkthrough of GMS with Mr. Mitchell. He took the time to go through it with us, highlight just all of the different things about the building that we're looking at. We've been able to retouch on some of the stuff that we've already looked at as a committee in the past and as a board. And there's been some, just preliminary discussion. There's a lot of people on the committee now, so there's a lot of ideas, many of which we've looked at in some capacity. But it was just good to have a forum of people talking about them and kind of tossing ideas back and forth. And so our next meeting, we are going to be focusing on really honing in on what our goals are, our vision, our mission, and then starting to come up with some ideas. I think one thing that I need some clarity on is, up to this point, prior to the vote failing for the new school, we as a board had authorized a certain amount of expenditures to engage certain professionals. So one thing that I do see as being a potential challenge right now is I think that there is some further need to have discussions with Kyle Barker. And I don't know, I'm not really privy to how we get billed for that or how much it costs us. But I do think, there's, particularly with this facilities committee, we do need to rehash some of the information that we've gathered. And I do think that we're going to need, I don't feel equipped, you probably don't either because you haven't done this yet. I don't feel equipped to present Kyle's data to the level of detail that I think it needs to be presented to the committee to start making some decisions. One of the biggest pieces of the decision making that we as a committee are going to need to tackle is how much, sorry, I don't look at you because they're all over there, how much money will we need to spend in the pursuit of examining other opportunities. So one thing that we talked about as a group at large, which by the way, the group has some really experienced, knowledgeable people who are in the field of estimating projects, which is amazing because they add a lot of value. So off the, back of the napkin math, they're able to sit there and say, okay, if we want to look at HVAC, for example, we're probably spending $1 million to actually cost this out appropriately to a level where someone would say that is accurately costed out. So
Sorry, with like a not to exceed, or
exactly
with the
right.
appropriate language that the town has
Right.
been really asking us for, right? That cost, you have to have some skin in the game in order to get those types of numbers.
Yep.
Right.
And so the one point that I keep coming back to with this committee is we need to be cognizant of how much taxpayer money we spend in the exploration of each of these options. So it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, we want to present multiple well-explored options, but there is a great cost with those. So, so that piece I do need some board guidance on because I think we need to figure out what our capability is for incurring costs even in the beginning phase of this with Kyle. And there also was, by the way, some talk of, do we engage, so it's been recommended maybe we have to engage in, go completely back to the drawing board. I don't personally think that that's the right option. Mr. Mitchell did highlight the fact that last time that they did this, there were 4 architects that came through, and he did discuss a little bit of why Kyle was chosen. I think that there's a ton of knowledge of the district, of the projects that we would be walking away from, that we would then have to pay a lot of money to get someone else up to speed on. But at a bare minimum, I think we need to have some initial dialogue with this new facilities committee with Kyle to dive back in. So I don't know what that costs, and I don't know what we.
Well, I think it comes out of the reserve fund. We don't.
There's some money set aside when it failed. There was discussion of still had this money. I want to say it was like $270,000, but that's could be my bad memory. Because I watched the better part of that meeting today. I just can't get through like the last 10 minutes. People keep calling me. One of the questions was, did we actually go to RFP or did we just do interviews with people?
For
Did we have four people?
the
We
architects?
did RFP process for.
Yep.
Full
We did.
floor.
It was.
Yes.
Yep.
But we also, to your point, we have the Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund that, according to the report tonight, right, has $256,000 in it, right? That's a far cry for what we might need to run with some of these options that people are saying they'd like a
Right.
full HVAC schematic and design, right? That
Yeah.
costs a lot of money. It costs certainly
Right.
more than what we have.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess my takeaway is for your April 24th meeting next week, right? Yes, you need to organize, set the governance, right? Go through
Right.
goal setting, and that type of thing with the committee. I think that's really important, and we need to do that. but we also need to start to hone in on what those top 2 or 3 options from the committee are.
Right.
That really the ask of the board is to investigate, right? I also think that, and I know we talked a little bit about this last week, or at our last meeting, excuse me, right? Is our directive to the facilities committee based upon March vote, is it new school off the table completely, or is new school still on the table based upon the vote?
Well, so as you know, I think I've stated this a few times, but we've vetted the new school to a pretty good extent that we have. I mean, the numbers will change if it were to come back on the table. I don't know that there's any more that needs to be vetted on that at this current, like for the facilities committee right now. I think that that's sitting on a shelf. I mean, we have the knowledge now of what that is, right? So, good. That's what that is. And I think that if we spend money and just say hypothetically speaking, we vet out 3 different options, and by some odd scenario they're all $44 million, right? Then it doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, we already put that on the shelf, so we won't take it back down. That might still be a good option, but right now, what we know from the vote was that didn't pass. So I don't think that we're looking at that or we're doing anything with that. That's just sitting on a shelf as, institutional knowledge that we have gained from the prior process.
So putting that aside, then, what are those top 2 or 3 options that are net new that we can explore that helps?
Well, we also have options that we began to explore, but maybe not to the satisfaction of people in the community.
And so my thought right now is we're going to do the goal setting thing. I think that the next best thing to do after that would be to bring Kyle back in to talk about more in depth, like how far did we go into each of these options, right? I'd like everyone on the committee to understand, like, this is how far we went into the renovation option. This is how far we went into the consolidation option. Which consolidation option were we talking about? I think it would be helpful because he was tasked with exploring those options. I think it would make sense to have that presented to the committee so that then the committee can say, okay, which of these do we want to try to explore again? And we need to get some sort of community outreach on that to get some direction on that too.
Right,
Because
there should be a survey that goes out to the community.
Right.
So Mr. Oblanis was talking about this at the meeting, right? He said the renovation option, the $37 million option, was to get us close to what a new school would give us. And he
Right.
talked about rehabbing the school. And that number, I guess ideally would be considerably less than $37 million.
But it has to meet the needs.
Right.
Right, but
It doesn't make sense to rehab
It doesn't
a
have to
building
meet
that
the
does
needs
not.
here, though. It has to
It has to
the
meet
needs.
the space needs. So a
we-
rehab of GMS means an addition because there is not currently room in the building for all of the classrooms. So you
Well,
can't.
there are other, we could talk about other options with
You can
the
shift
portables.
kids, and you can also shift kids,
Yep,
like,
I agree. We can look into those options, but I
So
think
without spending $30 million, I think that needs to be our next option. The truth is, guys, the thing failed miserably.
Well,
Mr. Oblanis's words, right?
yeah, right. But he said that. But if you actually do the math, it was under 400, a difference of 400 votes. So it. But if you did the math, that's actually, percentage wise, it's like, okay, well, if you look at it, but that's not that many people, right? And I'm not advocating for let's go out and push the new school again, but we have a divide. There even within our facilities committee, there are certain people that are saying you have to also source an option where it doesn't matter what the educational needs are. This is what the town's willing to give, and I think that there has to be a balance on that because. One thing that one of my biggest concerns with this project all along has been how many times are we as a town going to keep doing something that we say, well, this is what we're willing to do. That's how we ended up with the GMS that we have right now. Well, we're willing to add on the 1958 edition right now, so we'll do that. And then we end up with this heaping pile of problem. So, my hope is that this facilities committee can help give some guidance on that or shed some light on that. So I agree.
You gotta balance what you want, what we need, and what the town is willing to pay for.
Right.
And the town is not willing to pay $50 million for a school.
Yeah.
I think everybody has very passionate opinions on what that is, and I think until we survey the community, we don't know where the community lies.
So that's
why
it.
they voted no.
And I think that's it. So I think what I'm hearing then is your next meeting is April 24th, next Wednesday, right? Our next meeting after that's May 8th. Maybe for May 8th, we'll check on Kyle's availability, see if he can come in, talk to the committee, answer their questions. But really, I think what, Ms. Harrison, what you just alluded to, what we've talked about as a board is maybe after that, we figure out how to get a flyer out, postcard. We'll call it a postcard again, back out to the community, right, for pretty short money, really, and have them fill in a survey. And what's that survey?
Yes.
What?
So I think what I'll add to the agenda for the 24th is we can have a preliminary conversation about what kinds of ideas do we want to get feedback. Because we know, for example, that there has in the past been passionate feelings about middle schoolers being brought to the high school. We know that there's been passionate feelings about high school being shipped out to another district, right? So there's certain things that we probably at this point can say, these are some of the hot points that we need to figure out, like what are the
And
concerns.
those are the questions we should ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just so, we're aligned, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, for next March and kind of walking back from that timeline, like, I don't know that we'll have sufficient time to properly vet, potentially go to RFP on some of these new ideas that we have, whatever it might be in between that. The ask next year might be, hey, we need a little bit more capital in order to vet these ideas to a sufficient level.
Yeah.
Especially with a new superintendent,
New BA.
What I'm
New
really
curriculum
hoping
director.
is that our ask isn't gonna have to be, we need more portable space because we are out of room at GMS.
And that is
With these new with these new housing developments coming online,
We spoke of this. I'm really concerned about
You
that.
know,
and
I know
I'm
you
concerned
are,
about
yeah.
the impact this year
Right.
in
Right.
this budget.
and so,
Two at the high school this week from those new developments.
and that's exactly what I'm.
From the condos over there.
And that's what I'm worried about, is that this problem, I want to explore all of these options. I think we have to. I think in order to do our due diligence, we have to. But I think we have to also remember time is of the essence here. Of the new buildings that are being made and of the kids that are coming in, we can guess, but I think data shows us historically they're going to be mostly elementary school students. Most people move when their kids are in elementary school versus high school, although apparently 2 people did, move their kiddos in high school. We have to figure this problem out, and unfortunately, the only answer to space may be more portables, which breaks my heart.
It's high impact at the school where we have no capacity.
Right.
That's the challenge.
And that's the time is of the essence piece, which is why when you say we may not be able to get there in March, I agree with you, again, to the level that I think some people in town and the detail that some people need and want to be able to support the project, but we've got to also keep in mind, I do think there was consensus across the board, whether the new school was the right answer or not, that there is a problem.
Yeah, so
And
I
that we
think
need to fix it, and that we need to fix it soon.
we've confirmed. I don't know
I asked that-
anyone.
I asked
No
that
one's come
question.
forward and said I don't think that.
I
there's
asked
an
that
issue."
question to everyone just directly last night.
Yeah.
I said, now that you've toured the school, does anyone agree that doing nothing is not an option? Like
Right.
there was silence. Everyone
Good,
agreed
okay.
that something needs to be done.
And I felt like people were, again, even the people who didn't vote for the project were still saying something needs to be done. We've got to do something for these elementary
So
school
the
kiddos.
feedback, some of the additional feedback that we got was, and this is like a killer for us who had to be tasked with getting the information out, right? Like pretty consistently, there was a feeling of either it was hard to absorb the information. We didn't really know the information was there. It was didn't feel complete. Whatever it was, like there was a definite an information component of it. One thing that Mr. Mitchell has said a couple times, which I thought was a good point, is that even if you look at the numbers for the vote, right, 44% of people said, yes, I want this. The remainder of the people who voted no, we believe there to be multiple different buckets for different reasons, right? Some of them said no strictly on, I can't afford this. Totally get that. Some of them said no on the premise of, I don't feel like this was fully vetted, right? So like we have like a bunch of different buckets, and one thing that he said is, whatever we do, we have to also make sure that option is going to bring along the 44% of people that said yes already, because if we do something that's, if we were to look at something very short-sighted, which is like, well, we don't really care what you said, that it's all about just the cheapest option possible, so we're gonna literally just put a whole portable farm there, right? If those 44% of people don't vote yes, we are gonna have a problem, because there's presumably people in that no contingent who didn't vote no just based on cost.
But remember that if it's a bond, it's gonna be 60% if you take the option of, look, we need to redo the HVAC system.
Right.
And that's gonna be $1 million,
Right,
a number
right.
of the year.
Right.
We could do that in 1 year. And without a bond.
Right.
And a 50.1%.
But
And that's the biggest problem at GMS, right?
yeah,
Right?
but here's the thing, and this is my concern, and I think that at some point you guys are going to come to us with some critical needs at the school that we have to work on. My concern is if we say, okay, well, the HVAC is bad at the school, so let's just go do that. Now we've backed the town into the option of you have to renovate in this framework that we have here.
Because you just spent $1 million.
Because we just spent $1 million to do the HVAC in this building, in this
But
configuration.
guess what? If there's a catastrophic failure, then that's what we're
We're
back
gonna have to
into.
spend it anyway.
I agree with
Right.
that. I agree with that. But also, if we are able to get through this analysis, get a project that's properly vetted, again, it becomes the same problem over and over and over again. We're like, okay, well, we can't come to an agreement, so now let's spend $1 million on this, but we're not actually solving any of the problems. Like, we need to figure
But
out how to solve the
we will
problem.
solve the mold problem. We'll solve the condensation problem. We'll solve the problem.
But the
It may be
space-
for short term.
unfortunately, the space problem, I think, is probably the most overwhelming at this
So
point.
the committee has asked us to provide them with a list of like problems in order of
Yep.
priority.
Us
and
being the
Mr.
board or us being you
the
guys?
board, us being the board. You know, that we did explain to them that with GMS, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's not like we could say, well, the mold is the which, you know, by the way, the mold isn't a huge issue there. It's one of many issues, but
Well,
there
there's
is
not
no
truly like a mold issue there. There's not a mold issue there. There's a moisture issue.
Moisture
There's not a mold issue.
Right,
There's
right.
water drainage issues.
Right.
There's
But they're
no
all-
fire suppression.
there's so
there's
many of them.
capacity, right? There's
Right. So they said, you know, can you kind of lay out the 1,000 cuts for us and help us digest them? So Mr. Mitchell is working on that.
I think
for the
I was
next
gonna say I
meeting.
think he's the best person to
He is.
answer
Yeah,
that.
and I just, you know, one thing I just want to say out loud, because I keep falling victim to it too. We speak a lot about operations. We speak a lot about, like, you know, the building, but we keep losing, in some regards with a lot of these discussions, we keep losing the educational aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I really do think that Litchfield has to also make a decision, what are our goals as an educational institution for our kids? Like, do we want to be a leading, you know, educational institution in the state, or are we just really not really that concerned with that, and we just need to like meet the minimum requirements to get our kids through high school to meet our legal requirements? Because we do keep getting pushed off of, you know, well, that's okay. Space, you know, we didn't have space when we were kids. We were fine. You know, we ate asbestos when we were kids, and only half of us died. Like,
Even I'm not that old.
I wasn't talking about you.
There's no lead paint in my house that I know of.
So that is, you know, quite frankly, there's a lot of pieces to this that are really, it's very, very hard to navigate. But I will say I'm very optimistic because the involvement that we have on this committee now seems to be really great to have a diverse group of the community involved. So
I think it's great. My only concern, I just want to ask this, I just want to bring this up and say, when one of the biggest criticisms I felt like the project got back when we started doing it was that we were reinventing the wheel. We were spending too much money on an architect when there were already plans from 2006 and 2007. And so I do feel like we need to consider that concern if we were to go in a different direction than Kyle, because we've already spent so much money working with what I think, neutrally speaking, people across the state have said is one of the best school architects out there. And so I would hate to go back to the drawing board completely with a completely new architect and start over again. That being said, I understand there's a trust issue, and if Kyle's caught up in that trust issue, then we're gonna have to talk that through.
I don't think that there's a trust issue with Kyle. I think that what has
I'm
to
looking
happen.
at Peter, like, I'm honestly asking.
I think it was said at the meeting last week that there are some who just think we should start with a clean slate. Anybody who's involved in it before shouldn't be involved in it now. Let's get all new, fresh eyes on everything.
But those people that are saying that probably have no concept of the RFP that went out. They probably have not even looked at who was interviewed. Because again, we can't tell people, by the way, you from this firm, you have to come bid our project. It's just whoever bids it, right? So we had 4 that bid it, and
And I think the other
we're
other
going down a
piece of
rabbit
it,
hole here.
we kind of
we are, but
But
it's
I
like,
think it's important that Kyle is not only one of the best school architects in the state, he's also involved in creating the rules for state
Right.
building aid. I think it would be a huge loss to us, given that we spent 3 years with Kyle working on exploring options and figuring things out. I think it would be a huge mistake to start fresh and start clean. And I know people in town don't trust me, and I'm happy to take a step back if that's what it takes, but how many studies have we done in the last 20 years? And how many studies of those studies have we done in the last 20 years? And how much money have we put into those studies over the last 20 years?
right.
I mean, when Kyle came on board, the first thing he did was review the documents. He reviewed the studies that have already been done. I think spending another 3 years on studies and analysis is going to make it that much harder to get something in front of voters that they can support.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could put a pin in the conversation about Kyle, because I think that what I really want to do is have him be able to come present to this committee what he's done, let them ask questions, let them pick it apart, and then if they feel, if the majority of that committee has further concerns, we can discuss them. But I don't think, I'd like those people to be able to evaluate the work that's been done so far and see
I
whether
agree.
it actually makes sense to go in another direction and start from scratch. I agree with you, Heidi. Like, if I wish we could get like a highlight reel of all the things that we've been commented on, because people would realize that there's nothing that we can do that actually would be acceptable, because you know, it's you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but then also like we haven't done enough to prove it.
Right,
So
so which
I don't
is
think
it?
I don't
Yeah.
think we can like focus one way or the other. I think we just have to let the committee do it.
I'm only bringing it up for today's purposes in the sense that if you're looking for board direction in terms of what we're willing to commit to costs for exploring these options, for me, I think you're going to get, that money's gonna go further if we continue to have Mr. Barker as our architect, because he's already intimately familiar with the project. I think if we go elsewhere, you're gonna see the cost of that increase pretty dramatically, and if that's the direction that people want to go in, I think we need to talk about that. But for me personally, I don't think that's the way I would want to
for
go.
the interim, I think what we really need is what we need from Kyle is the ability to, number one, review what work has been done, and number two, let this committee say, okay, if we wanted to evaluate this option, what do we need to gather for information, and
Right.
who gets that for us? Like, and I think Kyle can answer those questions to say, like, you know, hypothetically, if we wanted to consolidate these two schools, what information do we need to gather, so that way the committee could say, okay, do we even want to pursue this option?
Right.
Because again, there's going to be costs with that.
So I think, can you investigate that, or can you work with Mr. Totten and Dr. Jetty to find out what the cost will be to have Kyle be able to come to those facility meetings?
I was just gonna say, did you have communications with Kyle at all, or was that always through?
That was always through Mike.
I did not,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, and he
So
came
that'll be the
to,
next step, if we
he
can.
came to several facility meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, that
If we
was
can
direct.
see-
he's always very willing to.
If he's available for the May 8th facilities meeting at 5:30 here at Town Hall, that's question one. And question two being,
What does it cost us?
yeah, exactly.
Ballpark.
Right. I mean, I'm sure he's got an hourly rate for stuff like that. 'Cause
Right,
he's-
I'm sure
I'm
we
sure
have
he does,
to
too.
enter
So-
another contract.
I think it makes a lot of sense bringing Kyle in. He's very intelligent. He knows a lot about Litchfield at this point too. It was never his way or the highway. You know, at the beginning, it was talking about solar and having everything be, you know, kind of using electricity. He said, well, it doesn't need to be that way. He's never said like this is how it has to be. It's always been like what's going to work for Litchfield. So I think, you know, you have a whole new facilities committee, letting them hear from Kyle is I
a
think
good thing.
a great start.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good start. Yep.
That's where we're going.
Okay,
So
so,
I had expressed an interest in being on that committee, but obviously couldn't commit to 3:30, but now that it's 5:30, I'd like to
Come-
participate. in
Come
the
on
process.
down.
yeah, and I'm glad to back out. I have enough on my plate. And I can stay apprised.
we'll join, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So we'll make that change on facilities too.
I'm gonna write that on the agenda right now, just to make a note.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, excellent. Well, I think we've covered off on facilities this evening. Next up on the agenda is the zoning matter update. So I think, Ms. Ames, you covered that off actually in correspondence.
I did.
Really no news at this point. The board did receive the legal opinion on the zoning matter. We were in attendance for the zoning meeting the other day. That meeting essentially got moved to May as the zoning committee reorganizes a bit. They currently have 3 members, and they're hopeful they'll get up to 5 for May.
Did they read our correspondence?
They did not.
Not even, okay.
Not even.
They were gonna read it into the record in May, right, if there's 5?
Correct. The zoning chair gave the option to proceed that evening, early this week. It was early this week, right? Or elect to wait until May, and
In the hopes that they have 5
in hopes that they have 5 people in a full board. Yep. All right, that covers off on zoning. Next up is school board comments. Any comments from school board members this evening?
I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Mitchell for his amazing attire
Oh, I
yesterday.
saw that picture on Facebook, hey now.
You know, it's funny. I really just, the morale booster that a guy in a tutu does to a school in a town is just amazing.
You guys
And
taking notes?
yeah, truly, he's a good sport. I was wondering,
Fashion show's coming, fellas, right?
did he do the tour last night with the tutu on?
No, I told
Oh,
him.
darn it.
I
Okay.
messaged him earlier and said that he had to, but he was not wearing it.
No, but I think it's such a morale booster for the kids. They, you know, it's not just that they think it's funny. I mean,
Jake.
they got to vote. So we'll start sizing out Jake for his purple tutu.
High school's really
the
good.
wigs for it.
Yeah. But I want to say thank you to that. Again, the Clue, we've talked about it a couple of times, was amazing. Thank you for that. There was a lot of great events with the high school this
Busy
weekend.
weekend.
And I think we're just getting into it.
Yeah,
frankly,
next
the
couple of
spring,
months are gonna be exciting.
Yeah, they're gonna be nice and busy, and kids are gonna be, you know, doing the sports and doing the fun activities. Is there any other musical concerts and whatnot?
Yes, we have a spring pops concert on May 21st, which is always a super fun concert. It's where they choose some light, entertaining, fewer folk songs and more pop songs.
Great.
So it's always a good, and it's the seniors' last concert, so they always do their solos and.
So last year we did do an end of the year event spreadsheet for the board so that the board could kind of fill in and do coverage to make sure we had coverage at different events. And so I'm happy to put that together and circulate
Yeah,
that.
that's great.
Please.
Just so we can make sure that
coverage.
one or two of us are at different things. Like I'm glad somebody made it to the carnival on Sunday, you know, like that kind of stuff to make sure that
Retirement
we're
tea's
there.
coming up as
Yep,
well.
yep.
When is
So,
the retirement tea again?
It's in my calendar.
21st or 2nd. It's right around back to back with something that's happening with the veterans too. Their golf tournament. They're back to back.
Golf tournament's the 22nd, I remember.
Yeah, so I think it's the 21st,
Looks like it's the 23rd.
23rd.
Okay, so-
Okay,
Thursday
see,
the 23rd.
they're back to back. So anyway, I'll make a list and circulate it so we can make sure, again, we are all allowed to go to these events because, I mean, it would not be considered to be any type of violation. If there's more than 2 people that want to go, but I'll put 2 slots on there just so we can make sure, you know, we have different people going to different events.
And just to plug on the veterans, we did receive the invitation at our last meeting, Saturday, May 4th
May 4th.
at 10 a.m. There's a ceremony right here at our Veterans Park.
Yep.
This is an RSVP for that, though.
You can go. You're good. All right, any other school board comments this evening?
Did we get, I should have asked you this during your report, but did we get the contracted custodians in, like, are they in yet, or when are they?
Yep,
They are?
yeah, so the same group that's doing the high school now is just going to the high school and then over to the middle school to do
Gotcha.
part of the middle school.
And that's going okay so far?
Every time I check in, it's been going really well.
Actually, I asked the question last night when we were with some of the custodians, and they said that was actually, they're doing a great job, and it's really helpful to the middle school team, so.
Good.
Yeah, so the stress level has started coming down a bit for them. So
I do
which is-
want
which is
to, that reminds me of another comment that I could have touched on facilities, but one of the things that we asked Dave Ross when we were walking around the building was, you know, Dave, people want to know, like, why, like, this, you know, should this be power washed? Like, what do we need to do? He's like, listen, He's like, yes, like there's a lot of maintenance that we need to be doing. We are so short staffed that I physically can't get to it. So that is a problem that we face no matter what. So I'm glad that we have this assistance, but that's really just helping us keep the schools cleaned. Not really.
That's only for student days and defined jobs
Right.
through the rest of this school year, is what the contract is.
So
Well, I think, just again, sorry, briefly, I know it's school board comments. It would be worth exploring. I know rec does volunteer days, where parents come down and lay down whatever for the fields, or they do whatever. Is there a day that we could have a volunteer to power wash, lawn mow, whatever it is, churn the
Add a
mulch?
little mulch.
Whatever it is that needs to be done at any of the schools for those projects. Again, I'm aware of the insurance issues. I'm aware of, making sure that liability issues. So I know we have to explore all that. But I would be curious if there are outdoor projects like that. I know there's a gentleman in town, Mr. Cady, who's offered a couple of times to come in to help tackle some of the smaller things on the to-do list. And so if we could have a day where we just spruce it up a little bit. Again, I don't want to get into liability or insurance issues, but maybe can we explore that would be my question.
yeah, that's a great idea.
All right. Yeah, good idea. All right. How's the manifest looking?
Done.
We have 3 signatures.
Signed.
Perfect. All right. Next up on the agenda is our second round of community input this evening. This is open to any comments to the school board. Seeing still no community joining us this evening, we will now close our second community input and we will move into our non-public session this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys.
All right, so
Thank
under
you.
RSA 91A,
I don't know, it's you and him are the problem. You're both here, you're here for hours.
under RSA 91A,
Did
the
you guys
board will
win
be
today?
moving into non-public, I believe specifically for matters under item
Think you held
C,
on?
Have a good night.
Thank you.
which are matters which if discussed in public would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself unless such person requests an open meeting. With that, we'll close it, move into non-public, and wish everyone a good evening.
Do you need a motion for non-public?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll make a motion to go into non-public.
Thank you. You have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
Excellent.
Thank you.